Hello and welcome back to Jimbo's PC Builds. Today I'm going to do the third and final part of the beginner's build videos. Now, don't forget to work yourself. Today on this one I'm going to be putting the power supply into the case. Then I'm going to be doing cable management. Woo, it's exciting. So first of all, let's have a look at the power supply we've got. As I covered in the introduction video, this is an EVGA 500 watt power supply. It is a non-modular power supply. Now what that means is that the box in here has all the cables required attached to it. Now what that means is once you connect everything up, the chances are you're going to have excess cabling to deal with. Okay, so this is where cable ties are going to come into their own. Let's get it out of the box and you can see what I'm talking about. So now we've got the power supply out of the box. It comes with, very important, the 4 screws to attach it to the case, the power supply itself, and a power cable to plug into the wall. Now as you can see, as I mentioned, it comes with every cable that you might ever want. Now what I would suggest you do at this stage is you need to undo all the cables, and unfortunately as soon as I undo this cable tie they're all going to fall about like so. Then you need to identify the cables that you're actually going to need. Now the first one we're going to need is the 24 pin connector for the main power for the board, so put that to the side. Okay, let's have a look at the next one. This next one is for PCI Express. That you need if you're adding a graphics card to your build, which at this point we're not, so ignore that for now. SATA power, we need that for the 3.5 inch drive and for the 2.5 inch drive. Another SATA one which is surplus, we don't need that. This is very important. This is the CPU power, which also goes into the motherboard, so we need that. Additionally, we also have good old Molenex connectors, legacy stuff. Okay, now as soon as you undo this and then you literally bring the cables back in, apart from getting tangled up, which they always do, or they seem to do for me anyway, they should just flop themselves back into place, into the way that they came out of the box. So you should be able to, using the cable tie that you've just put to the side, you should be able to crunch them up. The ones that you don't need, and tie the wee buggers back together. So you should have a nice bundle of cables that you don't need, and then loose the cables that you do. Okay. Now in this particular case, when adding the power supply into the case, it doesn't come in from the back, it comes in from inside. So you need to be careful with all of the cables that we've already inserted into the motherboard. Also, you need to look at the holes on the back of the case, because there is one hole that is further in and then the other 3 are in the corners. Now in this case it means that the power supply has got to go in this way to match with that hole. So adjust the cables out of the way that you've already put in, slide the power supply in delicately. There we go, it's nice and in. Then line up as much as you can with the holes on the back. Then take your 4 screws and bring them out, and get your screwdriver, I'd go for the top left hand one, which is in the middle, and tie that one nice and tight, because then you shouldn't get much flex from the power supply and it should be a pretty easy job to line up the other screws. So our power supply is now in place. What we can do at this stage now, just removing a case screw because I've already knocked 3 of them on the floor, easily done, is to move the cables that you want and you need over to the side. So you have those 3 cables we identified there, and the cables that we identified we don't want to get tangled up with everything else. We also don't want them in the way. So we can push those inside the basement. So now the only cables that we have around is our motherboard power, our SATA, and our CPU power. Now CPU power is always pretty much in the top corner. So I'm going to thread this one through, like so. And you've got to be careful when moving this around now because you have power cables knocking around. And this is going to be fun and games. It's over here. And again, there's a clip. So this will only go in one way. In this particular case, I'm going to flatten the cables, being very careful not to pull any cables. And I am going to simply click it into place. Voila! That is now in place. The other one, which is easy to do, is your motherboard power. You need to see which of the holes it lines up to. So it lines up to the top one, so I'm going to push it through. Then again, I'm going to lay the case flat. Now again, this will only go on one way. Now if you feel the edge of the socket that it goes into, there's a latch, and then on the end there's a lock. So you just have to make sure you line it up that way. Then if you put it in properly, which is easier said than done because the last 2 always come away. So it's best to do it with both hands. Push it in, voila. Now pull any excess cable through so you've got less showing in the case. Okay. Next, we're going to be adding the power to the said SATA drives that we installed earlier. To do so, you need to come back to the back of the case, okay? And what you need to do is look at the distance between the 2, because what you don't want to do is plug one end in because there's only a certain amount of distance between, and then the other one won't reach. So on this, there are 3. And again, this is an L-shaped, and you've got to be careful with these because these can break real easy. Voila. And then lastly, so there we push it in, and now we have the power plugged in. So now we can see that everything is plugged in. Yay! Now the real fun begins. We need to try and tidy these cables, okay? Now we've already got rid of any excess power by shoving them in the basement below, but as you can probably tell, we won't be able to put the case panel back on because you've got a massive cable sticking back out. So what you need to do is you need to use the cable ties that came with the case. Now what you want to be doing is finding a nice and tidy cable point and use this. You've got to thread it through, then you've got to push the cables together in one place. And then with the zip tie, pull it nice and shut. make sure the cables are nice and flush to the case. And you can see on the top there now that the cables are now pushed in towards the back of the tray, so you'll be able to get the motherboard, the case back closed. Now, more fun and games. And again, use the basement that comes with the case to shove as many cables as you can back in. Now be careful with your SATA cables. Now, oh, we have got another. I didn't think we had another slot. We have. And these are bloody awful to try and slide through these tiny little holes. And unfortunately they are not the longest of cable ties. So you've got to be careful that you don't want to twist cables, which I am actually doing right now. No, sorry, you can't see very much with this. But it's just me pulling and pushing with cables. Trying to work with the smallest bloody cable tie ever. There we go. Finally got it to the point where it will latch. Lastly, I'm going to do the CPU power cord, so it's in a place where it's not going to cause any interference with anything. And as you can see now, we're not completely flush, but I don't think we're ever going to get that to that point. But the case panel should now go back on. There is some loose cables dangling around in the basement a little bit, but it's not sticking out anywhere as much as it did. So now the final step is getting the case panel on. There we have it. One finished PC. Okay, well, I hope you learned something from that. It's a bit of the third video is a little bit difficult to do because of all the cable management involved. I'll try and do a just particular cable management video, so I'll be able to show in a bit more detail. I've only got the one camera, so it's kind of difficult, but I will endeavour to do it in the future. Again, constructive feedback welcome in the comments section below. Please leave positive feedback as well, because it's always welcome. Thumbs up or thumbs down, depending on what you thought of the whole video series. Also, please subscribe for further content. Don't forget to press the bell icon so you'll be told when the content's available. And always remember to take care.